League of Legends has been around for 15 years. The game is still so popular, with millions of players queuing up to play every single day. But how does League of Legends survive for another 15 years? Riot Games has realized that League of Legends must change in order to bridge the gap with the next generation of gamers. Because back when League of Legends was released, the most popular competitive games played completely differently, and free-to-play games had a bad reputation. But now, in 2025, the gaming landscape has completely flipped, and there is one societal shift that Riot hasn't adapted to, which may just end up costing League of Legends' future. So let's see how gaming has changed and how Riot Games is trying to make sure League of Legends can survive. The gaming landscape has changed significantly, especially within the esports scene. Back in 2009, esports were heavily dominated by the RTS genre. When it came to PC games, Warcraft 3 and StarCraft Brood War were seen as the height of competitive gaming, rewarding high APM and both macro and micro mechanics. Throughout 2009, 12 tournaments were played between both Warcraft 3 and StarCraft Brood War, even at a time when competitive gaming was a much smaller scene. And there was also one tournament of a little-known Warcraft 3 mod called Dota, which was the birth of the MOBA genre. But the fact that these RTS games were so popular meant that the player base of competitive gamers were already extremely familiar with their mechanics. RTS games are played by using key bindings on your structures and clicking with the mouse to control groups of units. Because the MOBA genre is literally a mod of RTS games, the mechanics of controlling a unit and using its abilities mean that the RTS players could easily transition into MOBA games. This meant that there was a huge group of players interested in both competitive games and familiar with the controls to play a MOBA. There were still some FPS games out there, like the original Counter-Strike, Counter-Strike Source, Halo 3, and Gears of War 2, having 12 tournaments throughout 2009. This meant that there was basically a 50-50 split between RTS and FPS tournaments, with various other games being sprinkled in between. But in 2025, the esports scene is completely different. These were the top 10 most popular esports games by viewership in 2024. And this can give us an idea of the current esports scene. Counter-Strike, Valorant, Fortnite, Apex Legends, Rainbow Six Siege, and PUBG. These competitive games paint a clear picture of the gaming landscape, as 6 out of the top 10 games are either third or first-person shooters. But more than that, the RTS genre is completely non-existent, being replaced by the two biggest MOBAs of League and Dota. Then Minecraft and Rocket League fill the other two categories, but Minecraft is more to do with streamer tournaments. League of Legends is clearly extremely dominant in viewership, but that means if Riot wants to bring on new players from other popular games, they are all first-person shooters. There is no longer this huge pool of RTS players that are playing a game with familiar mechanics. Instead, every single one of these shooter games utilizes WASD to move, and so Riot is clearly adapting by adding WASD to League of Legends. This addition of a new control scheme reminds me a lot of Street Fighter's modern control scheme. Fighting games are well known for having complicated inputs to perform combos, such as multiple joystick quarter circles and utilizing all available buttons. These difficult input requirements create a further barrier to entry for a genre which is already notoriously hard to get into. With their 1v1 nature and very competitive community, they are extremely punishing to new players. But Street Fighter 6 tried to get around this by adding a new control scheme called Modern. Modern simplifies the combos on every single character, getting rid of complex joystick movements and making them just one direction plus one button inputs, meaning that combos are significantly easier to pull off. So then why doesn't every player swap to modern controls and lose all skill in the game? Well, to prevent this from happening, modern controls make special and super attacks do less damage than with classic controls. And due to the limited number of inputs modern controls have, they can't access every single move. This means that the classic, more skill-expressive control scheme is superior in terms of damage and available options. but some players do talk about how the simplified control schemes create combos that are only possible on modern controls. However, this still isn't enough to give modern controls the competitive advantage, as 75% of the player base still uses classic controls, seeming to be the superior control scheme and making sure modern is just for new players. So comparing this to League of Legends, WASD needs to be the accessible control scheme, but I think it must be artificially limited to never overtake mouse controls as the most effective control scheme. WASD could break the entire balance of League of Legends. As for the game's entire lifetime, movement and attacking have both been tied to mouse control, making mechanics like kiting and dodging skill shots at the same time extremely impressive. Skill shot speed, champion damage, and so many things in the game are all balanced around the mouse. So by decoupling movement and damage, there is a possibility that WASD could completely break League of Legends and become the superior control scheme, but only time will tell. Hopefully, if Riot Games takes inspiration from Street Fighter 6 and integrates WASD in a healthy way, it will open the game to so many new players. Otherwise, we're gonna see WASD players perfectly kiting like scripters in bronze. But it's not just WASD that Riot Games is adding to help new players. There is another feature that was added to the PBE that somewhat flew under the radar: Last Hit Assistance. By turning Last Hit Assistance on, the minion's health bar will show the point at which you can last hit them. And once it's low enough, the health bar will turn white. When I saw this, I was completely outraged. Like, this just takes away skill and muscle memory from players that have been training for years to get it perfect. But then I learned that this is only available in normal games, which makes it somewhat better. This reminds me of Co-op vs AI games where they show the turret range, allowing new players to get familiar with where they can stand. Last Hit Assistance may allow players to get better at CSing faster to then come into ranked being familiar with the thresholds for last hitting. Or players may become too reliant on it and fall flat when they have to turn it off. But I still think that this imposes a bit too much on skill expression, as most of the player base plays normal games. It may be smarter for Riot to only allow this in custom games and Co-op vs AI games, where players can practice with their CSing, then come into normal games and ranked games without last hit assistance. But I can understand why Riot added it, as it makes CSing much more of a box to tick for new players. But this isn't the only thing they've done for accessibility. They updated the death recap to allow for much easier tracking of summoner spells and ults, as it instantly tells you what they've used even if you don't see it during a fight. They also put exact timers on the jungle camps, allowing for much easier tracking. Now these changes are for accessibility, but they are also because these features were part of third-party programs, and Riot didn't want some players having a competitive advantage by downloading a third-party program. But again, these changes remove some skill expression from the game. If Riot keeps making accessibility changes, it will be interesting to see where they draw the line, because taking away skill expression from players who have been practicing for years just makes the game less fun for them. But I think that this isn't quite the right direction for League. WASD is a smart addition due to how the gaming landscape has changed. But I think Riot should do a better job of getting players familiar with mechanics rather than just having band-aid solutions of making mechanics easier. Better tutorials, extra tutorials covering advanced mechanics like they've already done in 2xKO, which is only in beta, or specific practice tools targeting specific mechanics like Dota does. But no matter what Riot does, year by year, the click-to-move control scheme of League becomes less and less familiar with gaming as WASD takes over. So Riot must adapt for the next generation of gamers, otherwise they may not bother learning the game. But it's not just accessibility that may hinder League of Legends' future, because League being free to play no longer stands out in the market. When I first got into League, all the way back in Season 3, a friend of mine said, "You should try this League of Legends game, it's completely free." And at that time, it was music to my ears. After playing World of Warcraft for so long, not having to pay for a game felt like endless content. But in 2025, that is simply not the case. Fortnite is free, Counter-Strike is free with the option to pay, and even Overwatch, which used to have a 60 USD price tag when it first released, is now free. So just being a free game is not enough of an edge over the rest of the competitive game market. Games like Fortnite and Roblox even take this a step further with player developer tools. These tools allow players to create their own maps, game modes, and scenarios, to then post them online for the rest of the player base to enjoy. This effectively creates infinite content, as these aren't just singular games, but instead millions of games packaged into one. So for this next generation of gamers, when deciding whether or not to pick up League of Legends, many of them may ponder, why would I stop playing Roblox or Fortnite when it's free and endless content? There's even one Roblox game that has some oddly familiar characters in it. But do Roblox and Fortnite really matter for the fate of League of Legends? Well, according to League of Legends game director Riot Pew Pew Lasers, they certainly do. During a PC Gamer interview in 2024, Riot Pew Pew Lasers was quoted in saying that the gaming landscape has changed. Candidly, it is not the same situation it was 10 years ago, where you're in middle school or high school and League of Legends is the game everyone is talking about and everyone is playing. There's a lot of other games that we are competing with now. Those unspoken games are most likely Fortnite and Roblox. Although these games might not be as serious as League of Legends, they are still genuine competitors in the gaming space. The player bases of these games are undeniable, with hundreds of millions of players playing Roblox monthly. And while Fortnite has less players, these gamers truly represent the future that may pick up more competitive games as they grow up. But it's not just the younger audience that desires to have a variety of game modes. During the same interview with PC Gamer, League studio head Riot Medler went on to talk about the expectation of League's existing player base. When League first launched, we saw very few players at all playing ranked. It was all just normal games. It was experiential, learning the game. Then, in the middle years, we saw a shift towards focus on competitive play, especially from people in late high school and college. Now, for some of our audience, especially those that have jobs or kids or whatever, we are seeing some more shift towards, hey, I want to be competitive some of the time, and I want other experiences as well. But this desire for other experiences isn't anything new. League of Legends is based on the custom game for Warcraft 3, called Defense of the Ancients, or Dota. Back at the heights of Warcraft 3 and StarCraft, the custom map scene for those games was huge. Footman Frenzy, Legion TD, even a role-playing game like Life of a Peasant, and hundreds more custom games. This didn't detract from the competitiveness of Warcraft 3, but gave the player base hundreds of games to play with friends when they didn't want to play the main game mode. Even League of Legends competitor Dota 2 has the integration for players to create their own maps and post them for the rest of the player base to enjoy. The custom game Dota Auto Chess was a catalyst for TFT. Dota 1x6 is free for all between 6 different players. Even in Counter-Strike 2, players can make maps and post them for aim training or even create their own genre of game mode called Surf. Even the laziest developer Valve cares about the player-made map scene. They actually recently added JavaScript to the list of asset types, and instantly the Counter-Strike community has been absolutely cooking up some interesting things. Like look, after 1 week of this being implemented, people made this paintball game, which is just so sick, with custom gun skins and effects. These two games of Counter-Strike and Dota 2 still remain premier competitive games even while offering the options for more game modes, proving yet again you can have both at the same time, even in the modern gaming landscape. We can also see a game like Battlefield 6 has realized how important having endless content is, as they are releasing player developer tools for a game that isn't even out yet. These endless player created game modes create an ecosystem where even if the player gets bored of the regular game mode, they can still find things to do on the same game and continue to be invested. But even without player developer tools, Riot is still trying to take action in League of Legends right now and giving players more things to do. We've seen them bring back Doom bots, promise to keep Arena around for 12 months, add rotating ARAM maps for different experiences, and brought back Earth for the 100th time. They have also been adding more minigames in the client and have even added the Swift Play game mode. Riot also trialed the Brawl game mode, and while it was not the most popular, it clearly shows that they are willing to try things out. Some may still not be convinced, thinking League of Legends is all about its main competitive game mode, but even that isn't true. Back in 2014, during League of Legends' initial growth phase, Riot had a crazy year of game modes, releasing 7 different game modes throughout the year. Hexakill, Earth, One for All, Original Doombots, Ascension, Hexakill Twisted Treeline, and Legend of the Poro King, all in 1 year. We used to have Twisted Treeline, Dominion, and new game modes regularly coming out that all had different levels of spice to them. I've spoken about this a bit in one of my oldest videos about game modes, but I do think League of Legends would see a massive revolution if they added map developer tools. It would really take League of Legends to that Season 30 future, having this huge roster of champions, mechanics, and giving players the tools to make whatever game mode they can think of, fostering a huge ecosystem outside the main game mode, but still allowing Riot to focus on the main Summoner's Rift game mode and balance. Game modes also add more gameplay to League of Legends without having the roster reach 300 champions and feeling too bloated. Even the YouTuber Dumbs is so desperate for custom League game modes, he literally made his own version of Prop Hunt in League, which is a crazy feat in of itself, but just imagine that was available to every single player. Imagine a Nico hide and seek game where you can transform into objects and hide around. But even if Riot cannot be bothered with adding player developer tools, Riot needs to add enough content to League of Legends that new players feel like it's worth learning and switching over. Otherwise, they will remain happy in their Roblox and Fortnite ecosystem of infinite content. But it's not just infinite content that gamers want these days, because there is something that has become even more valuable in the world right now: socialization and community. In recent times, we have seen a shift in a thing that sociologists call third places. Third places are neutral public locations outside of home and work, where people can gather, connect, and engage in social activities, often fostering community and a sense of belonging. These might be places like the local park, pubs, nightclubs, or hobbies like martial arts and the gym. But for gamers online, communities and forums act as third places, giving them a space to socialize, play together, and have community. Places like Reddit, specific game forums, Discord, TeamSpeak, and Ventrilo have always been around. But during the pandemic, these communities became more and more important. With everyone being limited to the confines of their house and sometimes the workplace, people did not have access to their third spaces outside. But third spaces online saw a huge rise in popularity. Games like Among Us became so popular for their social interaction, and Twitch.tv saw viewership dramatically rise from 1.3 million to 2.49 million, eventually peaking at 3.1 million viewers in 2021. But this was extremely impactful for younger generations, as doing school online, they were not able to hang out with friends in person, so having online social interaction was extremely important. This general trend of online social interaction hasn't suddenly stopped after the pandemic ended, and many people continue to seek out social interaction and community online. Games like web fishing, VR chat, sledding game, and the Roblox game mode Mic Up are just full of people hanging out and speaking to one another. These games clearly show that there is a trend of people wanting more social interaction online. But this isn't actually anything new for League of Legends. During the early days of League of Legends, the community was a massive focus for the devs. Things like Summoner Showcase, showing off art, fan clips, and addressing creations of the community. The community forums that existed in their own space, not just on Reddit. And some of you may remember the Journals of Justice, which was ongoing lore that was regularly posted by the devs. There also used to be a server-wide general chat, where online players could message and speak amongst each other. Was any good conversation had in the server general chat? Probably not, but it was nice that it was easy to be part of the larger community of League rather than having to go on Reddit. I'm not saying that these things should come back, but Riot has cared about and tried to grow the community in the past. But is the community aspect of League really as important now as the game has become so competitive? People obviously play competitive games like League and Counter-Strike to grind, get better, and see the rewards for doing so. But League of Legends is missing out on one of the biggest social elements of competitive games. Voice chat plays a role in competitive strategy, but for many people, it is a way to have social interaction. By having casual conversation in some games, players can meet each other much easier, rather than just through text chat. And in unranked game modes, voice chat is basically only used for casual conversation. Adding voice chat to League could add this social element to the game. I used to be vehemently against voice chat in League because I thought it would make the ranked experience worse, but adding it to the game for normal games and ARAMs would foster more social interactions. But if Riot wants to increase social interaction without voice chat, how can they do it? Personally, I think they should take some example from their own new game, 2xKO. In 2xKO, instead of queuing up to find a match, you enter an area with other players. Players are able to walk around in the lobby and can get on a setup to verse each other 1v1, or even being able to make your own private lobby and invite all your friends. This 3D space outside of the main game means that players can talk amongst each other in between games. But would this exact setup work for League of Legends? Maybe not, but having a 3D online space to hang out in would be interesting. It almost seems unfeasible, but imagine having your own avatar you could customize with ranked rewards, like the old ranked helmets. Hanging out in the lobby area to queue up for ARAM games, and doing mini game modes in the lobby while waiting for ranked queues. The client has been outdated for so long, and I think a 3D overworld like this to move around in would be sick. And for Riot, it could mean more cosmetic sales, which for them means more revenue. But even with that incentive, I doubt Riot would actually do something like this. It seems like their mentality with the client is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But Riot definitely needs to find a way to make League of Legends more social. This next generation of gamers has grown up socializing online, and they don't just want to simply queue up and play the game. For hardcore League of Legends loyalists, these concepts may feel like they will detract from the main game, but we can see that other games have been trying to adapt to secure their future. Street Fighter VI adapted their controls to bring new players in, and are reviving a genre that is extremely hard to get into, resulting in Street Fighter VI becoming extremely popular within the fighting scene, without sacrificing the joy of the rest of the player base. Fortnite has been able to capitalize on the younger demographic by offering so much content with their game modes, while games like Counter-Strike and Dota 2 can also maintain their highly competitive player bases with the same plethora of developer game modes. And every other competitive game with a voice chat system, or the social hubs of fighting games like 2xKO and Street Fighter VI. Millions of players play League of Legends every single day. The game is obviously doing well, but we don't want League of Legends to turn into World of Warcraft, where the developers don't listen to the needs of the community until it's too late, leaving their player numbers to slowly dwindle. These are just the observations I've made from surveying the gaming landscape, looking at the recent changes to League, and listening to Rioter interviews. But I'd love to hear if you think there are any other things that League of Legends should add or change to ensure its future.